And we'll go ahead and get into today's material. So today we are talking mostly about validation. So we've talked about validation before, but this form that we're talking about today looks a lot different than the kind of validation that we were using in prior class examples. So I want to talk about what we need to do in our code to apply validation to the various parts of our applications, specifically the model, the view, and the controller. And then a little bit later on, we'll actually go through this and do a little bit of work on our Cheese app. So let's start with the model. If I want to validate items within the model, what kinds of code am I expecting to see show up to help me do that? Go ahead. We're going to annotate. Good. We know they're annotations because we see that @ sign out in front of those values. So I'm going to annotate the fields of my model. What kinds of annotations are we expecting to see? Not null is a common one, right? So if it has to be present or not. What else? Size. So we can set max and min values on sizes. Any other ones? I think those are the two big ones from the prep work. There are others, actually. And you'll see another one in Studio today, if you get around to it, for validating email addresses, because we're going to talk about our users again. So there are other validations for things like that. So, you know, the same kinds of things we were worried about validating in prior exercises are what we're concerned about here. It just looks a little different. We've got annotations to work with now. So then, what about in the controller? Well, actually, let's skip the controller. Let's talk about the view first. What am I going to see in the view to help me out with validating my my stuff? What kinds of code? Anybody know? Part of it's on my agenda to talk about a little bit later today. So the view is which part of the application again? The HTML. So I'm going to add some stuff to my HTML to help me out with validation. This stuff for rendering errors. So that's a big part of it, right? When I validate things, I have to prepare for the case when the validation fails. That's the whole reason why I'm doing validation, right? It's to catch kinds of errors that people might have when they're typing in information to my application. And so there's a way to represent those errors in my view. I believe it's just the th errors tag, right? Which is a placeholder that will get filled in with validation errors if any happen to occur. And if no validation errors occur, then it will just remain blank, right? There was another thing that, well, we'll talk about that a little bit later. So then let's talk about the controller. What does the controller side then need to perform validation? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Yeah. So that's the controller's role, right? We've been talking about this a lot lately, this idea of separation of concerns. So the controller is the one who gets to decide what happens, where the user is going to go based on the information that's been presented. And so the common way to do it, and we'll see this again when we do a little bit of coding here in a moment, is we'll check to see if there are errors, and if there are, we'll send them back, and they'll hopefully get displayed to the user. And if they're not, then we can proceed on with our application and send the user to wherever we want them to go next. So it really takes some work on all three parts, right, to perform validation. That's the major takeaway that I wanted to illustrate here, is that if we're interested in validating data, it's not just I can put all my validation here and move on with my day. It's a group effort. I need to worry about validation at all parts of my application. Sometimes we'll run validation in multiple places. I think the prep work mentioned, or actually the studio will talk about that a little bit today as well. And so, you know, we need to think about these things at every single layer. We saw some other ways of, not directly related to validation, but certainly useful with validation related things. In our view, we introduced a new tag, or a new, actually I should say attribute, I believe, not tag, called TH object. So what is that used for? Model binding, yeah. So we talked about model binding before, right? We talked about model binding last week, and the way we did model binding is we made sure that the form inputs had the same IDs attached to them as the fields in our model, correct? And so this allows us to not have to be so strict about that with the th object tag. In conjunction with some other tags, I can set up my form so that Timeleap will automatically set all this stuff up for me, and I don't have to worry about whether the ID of my text field matches the ID of my model field and things like that. It just is automatically taken care of. So then, what are some of the other tags I expect to see used if I have the th object tag? Th field, so that's what we're going to use then to tie an input to a particular field, right, of our model. And then what else might we see? Or we definitely saw another attribute, Timeleap attribute. It was the asterisk, yeah. So we saw the asterisk instead of a $sign. So what does that do for us? Yeah. I think it's on the tip of your tongue. Yeah. The field, exactly, yeah. The field from the object. Whatever object is referenced in the th object tag, right? The th object attribute, the star notation will reference a field from that object. So those two work together, yes?
Is it only possible to have one scoped object at a time?
So the question was, is it only possible to have one scoped object at a time? I believe that the answer is yes, although you could probably try to work around that by doing things like having multiple forms on a page and binding a different object to each one of those forms, right? Or maybe even a form within a form, although that would be a little unusual. I'm not sure I would recommend that route, but it'd be worth a try to see what would happen. I'm not sure what that would even do. But I believe, so, that's a good question too. The object tag is bound to the form, and then the attribute that I just forgot that we talked about a second ago, the field, is bound to the individual inputs of the form, right? Which kind of matches up with at least how I picture Java objects or objects in general, is it's a blank form. Where the fields are the blanks on the form, and then I fill them in, and that makes a new unique instance of an object. We're actually seeing that in practice in our apps, in our applications now. We did see one other Timeleap attribute. It's a little tricky, maybe a little confusing. The th4 attribute. We know that word for, right? We've been using that one for a long time, but it's not a loop. It's not a loop. What is it? What is the th4 attribute for? Or even just the for attribute in general exists in HTML. Does anybody know what that's for? For labels, yeah, we use it for labels. And it's really just a convenience factor. It's really just a way to make our forms a little bit more usable. It makes it so that if I click on the label, it's as if I clicked on the text box or whatever the input associated with that label is, right? I don't know if you've ever used a form where those attributes were not properly set. It can be kind of annoying. So yeah, it's just a little bit of a convenience thing. All right, last new topic before we start coding some stuff up. What's an enum? It's actually short for something. Enumeration, which is a word that's probably, it's certainly not a word that I used very frequently before getting into computer science, but is a regular Old English word whose definition applies here, right? An enumeration is taking some stuff and numbering them, like literally saying, all right, you're number 1, you're number 2, you're number 3, you're number 4. Pretty straightforward concept, but then how do we apply this concept, to computer science? That's the interesting part of this particular topic. And so to help us sort that out, let's talk about, what am I going to find in an enum definition? What are the things I expect to see if I'm creating an enum? Possible values. Am I going to set them? Am I going to number them? Am I going to say 1, 2, 3, 4? Nope. Usually not. Although actually you can. If you really, 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 really want to number them yourself, you can, but it's pretty rare. The computer will do it for you. You tell it what values you care about, and the computer will just number them for you. It's a simple enough task for the computer to be able to handle. What else might I see as part of my enum definition? So we can actually pull up the one from the prep work. We're going to take a look at it soon anyway. Here it is. So here are the values that belong to my enumeration, but then I also have, you can think of those as descriptions, string descriptions, or names of those values, and they look identical, right? In this particular case, are mostly identical, but they could be different, potentially, if you wanted to describe this in a little more detail or provide a different string description than the enumeration itself, you could. And then notice down here that we have things like, what is this? That's a constructor. And this looks like a getter to me. So enumerations, right? Even though they feel a little bit different, we got to go back to the old saying that I've been talking about since day 1 of Unit 3. Everything in Java is an object. Everything. And enums are included in that. Enums are also objects in Java. And so they have things like constructors. They have fields. They have getters. They can have setters if you really want. The unique part is this, where I can specify some values and have the computer enumerate them for me, but then the question is why? What's the point? Certainly we could think of other ways to do something like this, right? Like why not just make an array and put these values in an array or something? Why? Why do we bother with enums? What's the value? Anybody know? Anybody spend some time thinking about this? Some nice things about, yeah.
Maybe because it's never going to change.
Never going to change.
Because you have a list of items
That's certainly true that maybe an enum is never going to change, but I also think the opposite is something that worth considering, and I think enums make that nice as well. What if this list does change and I want to add additional things to this list? Is it going to mess up my numbering? Nope. The computer will just renumber everything if it has to, and the next time I run my application, it'll work. If I was manually numbering these, then I would have to make sure that my numbering scheme didn't ever do things like assign the same number to the same value, because that would screw things up, right? Or if I skipped a value, it could potentially screw things up. But if I let the computer do it for me, then if I can add values, I can take values away, and it'll get it right. It'll just do it the proper way. But then there's still a deeper question here, I feel like. Like, why are we caring about numbering these things in the first place, right? What's the point? Why do we care about assigning numbers to these values? Why can't I just talk about them as strings, perhaps? Does anybody have any ideas or intuition on that piece of an enumeration? Yeah. Make it more efficient? So we're getting closer. Yeah, we're certainly barking up the right tree when we think about efficiency. Think about how the computer views the world. Computer views the world as what? Ones and zeros, really, right? Binary values, which are very easily expressed as numbers, but we can, turn them into things like strings and so on and so forth. Text is nice for us. For humans, we're good at reading things and understanding things quickly. So if I see something, that says, oh, this is types of cheese, I think about hard cheeses and soft cheeses, right? I know what that means. That means something to me as a person. That doesn't mean anything to the computer. The computer doesn't know what cheese is, much less the different kinds of cheeses that can exist. So from the operational side of things, it's actually easier for the computer to work with numbers, because that's what the computer's view of the world is, numbers. But for humans, it's easier for us to think of things as text. And so an enumeration is a way to take some textual values and let the computer see them as numbers. which does allow us to do things more efficiently, like comparisons, right? Things of that nature. Not only that, there's one additional feature of enumerations that's very nice, right? What if I wanted to come in and tell you that plastic is a type of cheese? Well, it's not, because it's not in my enumeration, right? An enumeration very strictly defines these are the types of cheese, period, end of story. If you try to come at me with a different type, too bad, these are the types that I recognize. So I can very, very clearly define this is the set of things that I think exist, right? And anything else is not going to be accepted for this particular value. So all of those things are reasons to use enumerations. Hopefully that sold you on enumerations. They're not something that you're going to see like every single day necessarily, but when you do need them, or when you do find a good use for them, they serve their role very well. Very, very well. Does anybody have any questions on enums before we hop in to do some more coding on our cheese app? All right, so we're going to take a look at our cheese app again, and this first prep exercise, I'm not sure if anybody took a crack at this or not. It goes back to what we did in class on Monday, and basically lets us do some validation stuff with our editing page as well. So in the prep work, you added validation for adding things, but we did not do any validation for editing things, which is still important because somebody could break the validation as they're changing the values, right? That is something that could happen. So we'd want to check for that and react accordingly. I will give you a little bit of advance warning that at some point, we're going to find something that is probably going to give us a little bit of a challenge with this prep exercise that I'm looking forward to. So, I'm not going to spoil it too much. We're just going to keep working on this problem and wait until we see what kinds of things pop up for us to solve. So what we want to do, it actually gives us, some suggestions here, is we want to make sure that we are binding our cheese object to our form using THObject like we just talked about, and we're going to use THField and TH4 in a similar way, just like we talked about. We can actually refer to the code from the prep work to help us do that because it's a very similar kind of concept. And then we're going to do, we're going to use our enum, and then in the handler we're going to do some validation. So let's get started. We actually, there's three parts, remember, where validation comes into play: the model, the view, and the controller. The nice thing about this exercise is that one of those three is already taken care of for us in this particular situation, the model. So we can quickly review what validation is taking place in the model. If I look up here, we're validating the name and the description. I don't have to redo this. It's already done for us. We did it for the prep work. And we can reuse these same attributes, these same annotations when we're doing validation for the editing. So then we just have to worry about the other two things, the view and the controller. And so first thing that it suggests that we do is take a look at the view. So we're going to open up our view and modify it to use the new form of binding that we talked about this week. Which is, I don't have that open yet. Here it is. This is the edit form that we made last time in last class. Oh shoot, I just remembered that I forgot to post this code. I had totally intended to do that and I forgot. I'm very sorry about that. I will definitely do that, and if I don't, then poke me, please, on Slack and I'll get that up. But anyhow, we're gonna redo this code with the kind of the style that we did in the prep work. In fact, I even have my add HTML page up here so that I can refer back to it if I need to during this little exercise. And you can see that from the prep work today, they stuck in this THObject attribute, right? And we're going to need the same thing in our form. And actually, we should verify quickly that we actually have an object called cheese. We can do that by taking a peek at the controller really quickly and seeing that when I go to my edit page, I pass in a value that's called cheese. So I do have this object, it does exist, and it is being passed to my view, to my template. And so then we can, match up the various inputs from my field. Oops, looks like I'm missing a quote there. Can match up the various inputs of my field to the view. Now, last week, remember we had this th value attribute. Do I need this anymore? If I sync this up and I do th field, right, which is part of the goal of today, th field. How will I fill out this field? What will I say here? This is the first box for the name. Asterisk, curly brace, name. Oops, except I don't know where that came from. Yeah, there we go. Oh, I see what happened now. Asterisk. So now we've tied the name field of this object to this input box. My question to you remains though, right? We have this th value attribute here. What did we put this in for? Does anybody remember why we put this here last week? To set whatever text was supposed to be in that box, right? Do we still need it now? You don't think so? It's an interesting question. I see somebody else saying no. th field is gonna, I think you're right. I think th field is gonna take care of that for us. I pass in the object, and since it sees that the object is bound to the form and that this field is bound to this particular input, it's gonna read that field and stick it in that box for me. So I don't need this anymore. It's redundant. I don't think it would necessarily break anything if I left it in, but it's not necessary. It's just taking up space at this point, right? Anything else that you see that's redundant in here? Yeah, this is redundant as well. th field takes care of that too. I think we still need the type. So it's a text box. What about ID? Do I need that? Yeah, if we are doing CSS, that's a good point. I would need to keep that in. I'm going to leave it for now, even though it may not be strictly necessary. The other thing that we can do is look at our label and do this th4, right? And set the same property for that one that we did for the inputs. And I think we've got one down. We've still got one other one to go, or actually two other ones to go, because we have the type to worry about as well. The description is going to look very similar to the name input. We just need to tie it to the description field. So this can actually go away and be replaced with th field, just like we did up above. I forgot an equal sign. Thanks, IntelliJ. Thank you for doing that. There we go. Still need the type, but this can go away. And then I can do the same thing with the for attribute. Oops. Okay. And we got the two text boxes done. That wasn't too bad. It was very similar to what we had in the prep work, so no big surprises or anything yet. We still got one more to go, which is the type that used our enumeration. This is going to take a little bit more work because when we added this form on Monday, we did not have that enumeration yet. It did not exist. It was not available to us. So one of the things that I'm going to need to do, you can see it's mentioned in the instructions. I thought it was. Yeah. You want to pass in the list of all cheese type enum values, as we did in the add HTML from the lesson video. Because Again, it didn't exist when we did this before, so we need to incorporate that in. Fortunately for us, we can refer to this video here, or I'm sorry, this code here from the prep work, right? In fact, I might even just copy it verbatim. I'm in edit. There we go. And put it in like that. We can see that it's set to the type field. We've got a loop here that's going to iterate through the enumeration and set the text. But there's one additional thing that we need to do, which is you'll want to pre-select the specific option that is already stored on the given object. So this is, right, this is a drop-down. We've used these before, select tags with option tags, right? How do I set which one is currently picked? Anybody remember? Selected, that's right, selected. So now the question is, how do I do that in code? How do I tell it which one I want to be picked in code? That's the tricky piece, because do we think it's going to do it already? I actually don't know. Maybe it will. Maybe it'll do it for us automatically. We can certainly try it out. In fact, we've written some code. We can refresh and make sure that what we've written so far works and test this enumeration in the process. So I'll go ahead and... Yeah, what's up? Oh, did I do the wrong thing? Yeah. Thank you. Actually, yeah, I think you're right. Thank you. I got a little carried away with the star curly braces there. Oh, I do still need quotes. There we go. All right, so I restarted it. We can go take a look and see how we're doing so far. Whoops. Helps if I can type properly. All right, of course I have to add. Oh no, I already screwed something up apparently. Cheese.add line 20. That's from the add template though. What did I do in my add template? Did I delete something by mistake? What did I do? Huh. I don't think I touched this. Let's see what it says down here. Maybe it'll help me figure it out. Invalid property. Oh! Invalid property type of beam class. So where does this tell me that I should go look? Should go look at my cheese class in my model. I think it's just a naming issue with my model. I called it cheese type instead of type. All right, that's fine. My fault. Now need to change these references down here as well. I could have changed it in the view instead, I suppose, but I just changed it at the model. This is fine. Now I gotta restart my thing, I think. Or do I? Yeah, I think I do. So we didn't even get to check because we ran into an error. That's all right, these things happen. I'm glad we decided to test because this error would have popped up sooner or later and I'd rather catch it sooner. All right, let's try again, shall we? Oh, still, what did I do wrong? Same error? Oh no. Oh no, what did I do wrong? Maybe you're right. Yeah. Shoot. Yeah, the getters and setters need to be renamed because that's how it finds the ways to access. Oh, goodness. Sorry about that. Well, these things happen. This is programming. All right, this time it's gonna do it, maybe. We'll see. And so while this is starting up, just a refresher that we're trying to check our edit field to see, what things look like on that particular page. We're just running into a couple roadblocks. All right, cool. Oh, now this is busted because probably the same reason, actually, but this is easier to fix. Cheese types. Add cheese types. I don't see what happened there. How did this get screwed up? I just tested this before class, and it got screwed up somehow. Well, let's see if we can work our way. Oh wait, no, I see what happened. I think. Display add cheese form. I'm missing that line to add the cheese types in. That's my fault. Shoot, I really botched this one. Oh well. Not the first time I've screwed something up, and will not be the last. Probably not even today. I mean, I've already screwed up cheese types today. Tried to give my daughter some cheese for lunch, and she didn't like it, so that's my fault. Okay, hopefully the last time, question mark, please? Thank you, all right. Whew. All right, sorry for that little detour, but now we can get back to business and add cheese. And what we really care about is the edit link that somehow got put up here. I'm gonna click it anyway, and it'll be all right. And you can see that, okay, this is the question that we were hoping to answer. We finally got here. The name and the description filled out just fine, no problems there, but the type is empty. The type is empty. Actually, part of that is because we never actually passed the enumeration into the box, right? Never actually passed it in to this template. So that's one piece that's missing, but even then, I still have to wonder, even if we fix that, is that going to properly select the right one in this box? I'm feeling like the answer to that is probably no, but we can try it and see what happens. If I go to the edit form, I need to add the cheese types in. All right, model cheese types. Cheese. This is the same line. In fact, I probably could have just pasted this instead. What is the cheese type? There we go. So now this has the enumeration. While this is starting up, I'll ask you another question. Why does it say 2? It's the first cheese that I added. Why does it say 2? Shouldn't it be 1? What happened? Should be a 2? I'm sorry? This is the GET request, yeah. I added one. I did, yeah. It has to do with this line here. I'm adding a blank one to the form so that it has something to be bound to, right? And anytime I create a new cheese, what happens? It updates that ID for me automatically. So I burned an ID here. I burned this ID. So that's ID number 1, this blank cheese, right? And then another one gets created when I fill out the form and submit. That's ID number 2, which is what I'm seeing. Any ideas on what we can do about that? Does that bother you? Yeah? You hate it? Any ideas on what we could do about that? So what does that mean? Think about what that actually means. Anytime I create a cheese, the ID is going to go up by 2, right? So it'll be 2, 4, 6, 8, et cetera, et cetera. Anytime I visit the add form, yeah, anytime I visit the add form. So if yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. You don't like that. Any ideas on how we can fix it? I'm sorry? Could use it instead? Constructor that can take parameters? Yeah, we could. We could make a different constructor that doesn't consume an ID number. That's one way to do it, because we know what constructor gets used when we submit the form, right? That's our default constructor. If I make a constructor, a different constructor that I want to use here, or maybe another way to think about it is maybe the default, well, no, the default constructor has to use an ID because that's what gets called when we create a new cheese object from the form that we bound. But I could create another constructor here that does not consume an ID number. I could do that. That's one possible solution. I'm glad nobody said just divide them all by 2 because that would not work. Yeah.
Why not just pass that on to the template?
Why not do what now?
Why not pass creating new sheets?
Uh-huh.
Pass that sheets. Why do you have that?
So could I take this line out? I mean, I guess is kind of what we're getting at here. Is that the other question? Like I could take this line out?
No, I'm
Or
so why not use, so that one right now, does it even have a name?
No.
Custom template, so you can give it a name of cheese, right? And then use that.
It actually does have a name. It assigns the name by default. Yeah.
But it's something that you can pass to the template and work with that. The field that.
I could make a dummy cheese, I guess is maybe kind of what you're getting at.
I think what he's saying is, and I kind of got confused on it too, is the thought process of if we send the cheese object to the view, can we get that same cheese object?
Can we get that same one back? Yeah.
That's what I did. I done this.
Oh, that's what you did?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what did you have to change to make that happen then?
So give it some name, and then you can use that same cheese.
So even if I say cheese here, it's happy with me, huh? Oops. Like that? That's all I had to do?
And then the template, that,
Yeah.
show that to
So I already have this.
yeah, and I think that actually,
That's it, huh?
yeah, that's it.
Well, we
I
can-
didn't notice the ID, maybe I just didn't notice.
Well, we can try it. We'll see. That we are on another tangent, but that's okay. I like tangents. What were we doing before? Oh yeah, we were checking the edit page to make sure that this actually did a thing. So we can actually test it right now. Maybe let's add another one here. All right, and the edit button's still off because, yeah. Oh, it actually worked. No, well, or did it? Or did it just pick the first one on the list, right? That's the question. Did it pick the first one on the list? So let's try another one. Different kind of cheddar. Soft cheddar sounds disgusting. Oh, it worked. It worked. Cool. But it does say 4. Yeah, I don't know if I restarted it since I made the code change that was suggested to me. I don't think that I did. But yeah, the edit page actually seems to be doing what we want. We could, I gotta fix this HTML thing because it's driving me crazy. On the index here, what did I do wrong? Oh, I just forgot to put in a TD tag. I had to redo my index because if those of you who were here on Monday remember at the studio that I mistakenly destroyed it. I didn't mean to, but it happened and I've got video to prove it. Anyhow, so if I go back to my list, all right, cool, that works. But yeah, since we've got So there's one other thing that we need to check, right? The whole purpose that we've been doing this is for validation. So if I go in here and I try to fail validation somehow by taking the description away, for example, it can't be blank. That was one of the validation things that we had to do. The question is, does it do what I want it to do? And the answer is no, it does not. It happily accepts the blank box there. Because we weren't finished. We're not finished with this example yet. Where in the code do I need to worry about that kind of stuff? I'm sorry? I can't quite hear. I listen to too much loud music in my car. Yeah. So we have the annotations, I believe, right? Yeah, we have that in the cheese class. We have here, yeah. Not null. Do I have it in the post method? So in the controller, when I handle the edit form, which is right here, process edit form, I don't have anything in here checking that. So how do I set that up? How do I set this up to see if any validation problems occurred and do something about it? What do I need to do? Yeah, so we got some weird stuff. Well, not weird stuff. It's just old stuff, right? I don't have this. I don't need this anymore, right? Or do I? I don't need this anymore because I'm binding the object to the form, right? I'm binding the object to the form. So instead, I can just replace this with a model. Is it model attribute? Or? Yeah, okay. And I need to make sure that it's valid. Call that cheese. So this is the object now that we're getting back from our form. And then what else do I need? I need the errors. Oh, I deleted a thing. My fault. Didn't mean to. I deleted a thing. Errors. And I happen to do this the correct way because you guys told me to, thank you. But it's very important that this occurs directly after. I think the prep work repeated that 10 times in bold and underlined. Very important that the errors come after the valid model attributes in the parameter list here. We're not quite done yet. I got to do a couple other things. You can see that I've got some problems here now, right? Got some problems here now. This is upset because the way that we did our model binding changed. In fact, I no longer have to look up the cheese because it's editing that cheese directly. So our cheese data class is not really helping us here anymore. So this whole thing actually becomes simplified. The edit is done. The object that I got is going to have all the edited information already. It's going to be taken care of. So then how do I take care of the validation piece? That's the last step, right? What do I need to do here to see if there were validation problems? We can actually take a peek at how it was done before. If errors.has errors, so this is saying if there was a problem, then we're going to send you back. We're going to send you back to where you came from. And you're going to have to fix them. So I need to send the cheese object and the cheese types. What cheese object do I want to send back? Oh, I don't even have a model in here. Whoops, did I delete that? I didn't mean to, but I did. Which cheese do I want to send back? Right, I want to send this one back, right? I want to send that one back. The one that came to me from the form, so that it can use those values and repopulate the boxes. Model.add attributes, cheese. This is the cheese from the parameter list. Oops. send in the cheese type so that I can populate the select box, the options in the select box. All right. Let's retry this again and see where we're at. And while this is loading up, here's another question for you, right? What am I doing with this? What was I doing with that? So one of the things that we did is we switched how objects were bound to our form. In the past, what did we do? We had the ID in the form so that we could look up the cheese and make the modifications on that object ourselves. But that's not what we're doing anymore. We're letting the binding make those changes for us. So I'm actually not using this ID anymore at all. At least not here. So it's become redundant to me. I can get rid of it. And in fact, there was another place that it was introduced, which was in the form itself, right here, in this hidden, remember this hidden value from before? We don't need it anymore. We are passing the object in, it's getting bound directly to our form. This business with the ID is no longer necessary for us to have to worry about, so I can get rid of that as well. But let's see if we can make some progress here on this one with the validation stuff. I need to put in cheese, fake, whatever. Edit. It still says 2. Whoops, that's all right. So I want to check validation. So one thing to do is to take that off and hit the button, and I got a problem. Cheese ID is present. Oh, shoot. Well, maybe I screwed up then. Maybe I still needed that value after all. Wait, let me think about that. Maybe I got a little bit overzealous with the cheese ID. Let's see what it says. There's got to be another error. Actually, I've been taking this for granted. I apologize for switching back and forth so quickly. But when you see something like this, I really, really hope you've gotten into the habit of thinking, oh, maybe there's another error message in IntelliJ that will give me more information about this problem, because oftentimes there will be. So we can take a look at, see what IntelliJ is trying to tell us. It says optional int parameter cheese ID is present, but cannot be translated into a null value. I took it out of the controller, but I did not restart it afterwards. You're right. So maybe a restart would get me back into shape. Let's give that a try. I think that was a good observation. So when I took it out of the HTML, that update happens right away, right? But controller updates don't. That's one of the annoying things about Spring. All right, we have restarted it a lot today too, but that's normal. That is totally normal. All right. We have to add this cheese again. All right. All right, cool. And take this off, and now we're gonna cross our fingers and hope. Ah, so what happened? I took the description away. So your question is, when you send the object to the form, you don't get the same object back? It's not taking my change at all. It's just not taking it. Uh-oh. Anybody know what's going on? Did I drive us off a cliff? It's possible. It does have the same ID, yeah, that's true. So I see one thing that I should have done, but it didn't do. I should have sent sent us back to the edit page here, right? So there's one error, but that doesn't solve the problem that it didn't look like the object had changed, correct? So maybe, I don't know. Your question was, it doesn't actually change the object, right? So I still, maybe removing the ID then was a bad idea, because I still need to look up the ID of the cheese that I was changing and still make the changes on that particular object. Perhaps, correct? We can put it back.
I thought that model actually creates a new object.
Creates a new object. So that would mean it's a totally different cheese object that has not been added to our cheese data. So then maybe I don't need the ID. Or here's the question, right? Does it matter if I change the ID in the process of this edit? Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I think it could go either way. I think it's probably more likely a bad thing. But what I'm gonna do, because we're running out of time actually too, and I've driven us off a cliff too many times today already, is put back the code that we had before. Well, I don't want to do it here. I want to do it after the validation check. This is just going to be the code from last week to edit the cheese. C.setName. Now, where am I going to get the name from? Do I want to put string name back here? Got the ID and the name. I got everything in this object, right? So I can use this object. I just am copying values over. So it'd be cheese.getName, copy it over, c.setDescription, cheese.getDescription, and then c.setType, cheese.getType. In other words, right, I don't have the values separated out anymore. They're all in this cheese object, and I want to keep them there because that's what's doing the validation for me. So I want to keep this cheese object bound to the form because that's what's doing the validation. So I'm going to pull those values out of the cheese object and set them to this cheese object. I've got two objects. I've got the one that was created by modifying the form, and then I've got the one that I actually want to modify, which I'm looking up by the ID number. I know that seems perhaps a bit overly complicated, but I think that is how it's going to have to work. And the one thing that I need to do before I restart this is put the ID number back in the form that I took out.
The cheese that you got back in the form should have set the same ID as the one that edit. Or no, because it has to be unique, so
Oh, well, here's an idea actually that we didn't necessarily think of, right? Maybe I know we're all over the place today, but this input is not bound to anything, correct? Should it be? Is there a reason why I couldn't bind this input to the ID? In other words, could I do something like this for the ID? It's worth a try. That might solve all of our problems, actually. All right, let's try one more time. I'm aware of what time it is. I'm not going to drag this out too much longer, but I would like to give it one or two more goes here to see if we can get these problems sorted out. Again, while this is booting up. This is a tricky exercise that we had today, right? This is a little bit harder than the average exercise, but guess what? This is a great example of what programming looks like. I know it seems like I'm trying 10 different things a minute and going off in different directions, but that's That's how it works. That's what happens in a real world example. So I apologize if I was difficult to follow today. I feel like I was probably jumping around a little bit too much to follow. I'm sorry about that if that is the case, but this is programming. What you've seen today, running things, trying to figure out where the problem is, and trying again is the name of the game. Ah, shoot, I already screwed something up. Doesn't like my syntax? Of all the things, invalid property, it's not ID, it's cheese ID, isn't it? Yeah, it's cheese ID. Ah, man. Okay, I fixed it. What was I gonna do? I don't know, I guess try this. All right, hey, so progress. Notice that it did send us back, right? There is something missing though. The error message, that's an easy fix. We did that in the prep work today, so I can actually just steal that. Well, steal is a little harsh of a word, but I can grab the code for that here. That says description, actually, not name. There we go. Errors for the description, and then I need another, what? Wait, is that too many div? It's too many divs. Where did you come from? I guess I copied too much. And I can steal the one for, that's for description. I need the one for name. All right. Which can go, oh, I guess I pasted it twice already. I don't remember doing that. Okay. I got that extra div again. I shouldn't have to restart this because I've only made changes to the HTML. So if I refresh again, maybe. Ah, there we go. There's our error message. And if I type in something proper, does it work? It does. Hey, all right. Whew. Gotta be honest with you guys, I was a little worried we weren't gonna pull it off there for a second, but these things happen. Oops. I'm just typing gibberish. It just kind of happened that way. Fake cheese, yeah. Seems to be working. Oh, let's test the validation on this field too. It's what I'm intended to do. This has a certain length. Yeah, it must be between 3 and 15. Notice the ID number is not changing. It's staying constant. That's good. So deleting the ID was a little bit presumptuous on my part. A lot of, I think, the problems that I was getting myself into kind of had to do with the fact that these instructions, unlike what we did on Monday, did not lead me through step by step and say exactly what to do. They're like, do this, then do this, then do this. Again, another example of what real world programming is like, right? I'm not always going to have a step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4 set of instructions in front of me to put together a program. I'm going to have to use my knowledge of the concepts, try some things, see what works, see what doesn't, and adjust accordingly. I hope that you're getting used to that process. I hope that today's more free-form coding session was not intimidating to you, because I want to show you more situations like that the closer we get to the end of class, so that you get more and more used to that process. Before I make any, somebody ask me some questions before I screw this code up again, please. Anybody got any questions for me before I introduce more errors into my code? I'm actually not going to touch it because it seems to be working right now. But what I am going to do, I promise, I'm going to upload this to Slack so that you can take a look at it. I'll just probably put the whole project up if you want to take a look at it. And you have a studio today, which continues on the studio that we did on Monday. If you were here and you got the studio done, cool. If not, actually, the code that I'm about to post to Slack will also have the code from Monday on there. So you could potentially use that as a starting point if you wish to pick up from today's studio, although I really would recommend that you consider doing Monday Studio if you haven't done so already, because more practice is always a good thing. All right, that's going to do it for today. Unless there's any questions, I will see you guys at 8 o'clock.